ladies and gentlemen. It's a wonderful event. It's great to have you here. We realized from when we walked in, there's fewer people. So what we'll do is play musical chairs, get everyone to move around a bit. So for the camera, it still looks really, really busy, if that's okay. Fantastic. My name is Dave Crane. I've got the pleasure of hosting this wonderful panel, and I feel really in awe of the talent that we have here. The session is called Crafting a Vibrant Company Culture and Embedding Company Values and Nurturing Talent in Retail. And for those of you who don't know who I am, I've been in Dubai 30 years. If something happened during that time, I apologize. It was somebody else. You have to Google that. But I can tell you about the incredible guests that we have on this stage joining me right now. So, sitting next to me is a gentleman I've known for quite some time. KUNAL WADHWANI is a CHRO for Choithrams, a seasoned HR management professional with over 20 years of experience. He's one of these gentlemen that whenever you go around anywhere and you look on LinkedIn, he's won another award. And the reason he does this is because he's got an incredible way of transforming organizations, and the stuff he's done at Choithrams has won him lots and lots of awards as the most influential HR leader for many years. And also he's training the new generation to come through and create an organization that's really having a huge impact across the region. So a round of applause, please, for Mr. KUNAL. You can always tell a good audience because they join in sometimes, especially when you tell them. Okay, next to KUNAL, on this side we have the amazing Mary Homer, who's the outgoing CEO of the White Company. With 7 years at the White Company, she steered them from incredible successes all the way through, significantly enhancing its market position and achieving sustained growth. And as she did all these many things, she also came to it having done 11 years at Topshop for the managing director. Her view on AI, we're going to be looking forward to seeing that, but I don't know what the conversations have been so far, but definitely AI is a business accelerator and we should embrace it. For anybody who doesn't agree with that, you'll find out what we all think in a moment. So a round of applause for Mary. Slightly less people, but if you move around and clap, that'll be fantastic. Okay, and just on the side there, the big gentleman is Phil LEARNEY. Now, I've got to say before we introduce Phil and I are from the same part of the UK, and there's a very good chance you won't understand the word we're saying. There will be subtitles up there to watch, just in case there's a problem with it. He's a co-founder of HMN24, a sports and exercise scientist and author, and Phil's been one of the world's leading and most in-demand strength and wellness coaches for the past 2 decades, with an exclusive and high-profile roster of clients ranging from CEOs, elite athletes, actors, and actresses. And so if you can think of a celebrity, they're probably already working with Phil, and if they're not working with Phil, they probably will be. So a round of applause, please, for Phil. Wonderful. So that's our panel. Now, we're going to be looking at a number of different things today, and we're really looking about the way that culture has an impact on organizations and what we need to be doing to improve where we are and be able to be sustainable in the future, looking at team building and flexibility, and also how you can integrate AI. We may touch on that a little bit later on. But I'm going to start off with a basic question, and I'm going to throw it all the way along the panel and all the way back again, and it's this one. Why is culture so important to the success of a business? And if it is, what kind of culture should you be delivering? No pressure. Go to KUNAL first.
Hello, everyone. So culture is sometimes seen as a very in thing in today's time, right? It's like going for a salsa class and talking about culture in and out. But predominantly, if you ask a CEO in today's time, what's your most important alignment in the organization? What you cater to today? And if the CEO says, I look at external customers, that's a lie, right? Because how many external customers would a CEO meet on a routine basis, on a weekly basis, on a daily basis? You're primarily supposed to take care of the people who take care of the external customers in the organization. And people enable the culture in the organization. Once you decide what pattern you want to follow or how you want to be known as an organization, you start making your strategies accordingly, right? So there's this saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? And it's so relevant in today's time because when you focus on how you want to be seen as an organization, you end up doing things that attract talent within the organization, and more importantly, once you have attracted them, lets them stay in the organization. So that would be my opening remark as far as culture is concerned.
Very good, thank you. Mary?
You've just stolen my saying. No, it's like, I use that saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast, all the time. And I would say, you know, if your culture is right and you create the right culture, you know, it's dynamic and it's empowering, you will get so much more from your strategy, and your strategy will get delivered by really empowered and talented people. And at the end of the day, it's the people that make the decisions day in and day out. They will deliver your strategy, and also, therefore, they are your most competitive asset.
Very good.
I look at culture from a slightly different perspective, because obviously we're looking at people, which ultimately is what drives culture. So it's the people within your organization. So when we look at wellness and we look at the well-being of the individuals within that culture, we're looking at how are they behaving, how are they acting, how are they functioning on a day-to-day basis. So obviously from wellness piece, we're looking at, are they sleeping well, are they functioning well during the day, what's their attitude like, what's their behaviors like, and all of these tie into that wellness piece that obviously I'm here to talk about. And that drives that culture because it drives the functioning of the people, how they're performing, how they behave, and how they act around other employees.
Now, we're going to go into several questions. I just want to throw this at you, Phil, because you do come in from a slightly different angle from everybody, and the fact that it's really about the well-being and the mindset of the culture, which up to recently in many places hasn't even been a thought for many organizations. It's just we pay your wages, turn up and do your thing. But the pandemic changed a lot. How have you found that being an impact on the way that organizations see culture now?
I think culture's always been, it's always been this thing, it's been this dream, right? It's almost been this pipe dream of businesses. They want this culture internally. They want people to, to get on, to work together well, to operate well, but we're not thinking about the individuals here. And what the wellness piece always goes at is that we have to look at the functioning of that individual when they come into that workplace. You know, are they propping up their work cycle, the time that they're in work with stimulants? Are they sleeping well when they get home? How are their relationships at home? And when we look at the things that in corporate wellness we know statistically work, and when we look at the science, we look at mental health, we look at employee assistance programs, we look at ergonomics, lighting environments, we look at the architecture of a building, how that functions around the individual. And we look at wellness programs, we look at the mental health, and we also need to consider the things that work and the things that don't. And often the wellness thing is a box ticking exercise. Is people they bring in a specialist on sleep or something like that a couple of times a year, but there's never any actionable points for employees to go away and do. Now, if I can take it, I always talk about net effect. So if I can take 4,000 people within an organization, or 400 people within an organization, improve their hydration status, performance goes up. People make more money, people perform better. If I can do the same thing with sleep, it's the same output. But what we've looked at is we've looked at these kind of token gestures towards culture and towards wellness that have just been this box-ticking exercise. So I think it's evolved a lot. The pandemic has probably changed a lot of things, is that we now consider things very, very differently because a lot of us experienced that. We experienced that downturn of productivity from working at home or whatever it might be. And we also saw that upturn of certain levels of productivity because people had these flexible working arrangements, which again, we know statistically and scientifically work. We know that flexible work patterns, actually the output is way higher than it is if we have the structured work pattern. So it's embracing these things that we know they have this positive effect, but it's also taking that older culture of business. Remember, the 9-5 was invented in 1926, but we've never reviewed it. We've never looked at it and gone, maybe this doesn't work quite as effectively as we'd like it to. And what's happened now is businesses are starting to realize that, because we have to work these long hours, that we can have certain employees that work the morning hours, certain employees work the evening hours, and they actually function better at those times, which comes down to things like chronotypes and all the science-y biology bits. But yeah, it's very different.
It's fascinating, and we've got lots of questions to go through in the time that we've got. I want to ask one more before we move on to the next subject. When you start looking at, the diet and the sleep and all these different patterns, don't you get hit by people saying none of your business? From employers to employees, I go to work, I give you enough of my time, and now you want to know what I'm doing at home? Now, I bring this up not to be ruining what you do, because I'm sure you do a brilliant job of it, but that's a culture that for many of the people here, it would step one stage further when you start monitoring what happens in their own home, because they want to close the doors and make it different.
Yeah, but the whole idea isn't that we're telling people what to do. What we're doing is we're looking for best practice. We're trying to advise people as to the best thing they can do. So if I talk to someone about, for example, caffeine management, you know, people, remember, if somebody has a sleep problem, they also have a wake problem. What I need for them to register is that the way that they support that wake problem is through the excessive use of stimulants, which then affects their sleep.
Okay.
Now we're in this circular problem. Now that doesn't just affect work. That doesn't just affect them when they step into work in the morning. That affects them when they go home at night. It affects them when they sleep. It affects them when they travel. It affects their mental health, their physical health, their heart health, their metabolic health, and it actually increases their cancer risk. So we're looking at significant health markers here, and as an employee, we must have that responsibility to improve those markers, improve output, and ultimately it's a win-win situation. Is that if I've got a better performance from my employees, I've also got a better output from my employees. And they're happier at home. If they're happier at home, they're happier at work. And we could get into a bunch of phrases here, but ultimately that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the net effect across a spectrum. And we're not dictating to people what they should or can and can't do. What we're saying is, let's advise them as to the best practice, and then it's up to them. It's like when we deal with pro athletes, and sorry, I'll be very quick here. When we deal with pro athletes, we have athletes that are willing to do anything to get that edge. And then we have athletes that don't. The athletes that don't, there's nothing we can do about. You know, and this is the same with anybody. You can take a horse to water, right? But you can't make it drink.
I know. Snap. Right, the rest of our panel is saying, can we say something now? So you're not allowed to talk for 10 minutes. All right, I'm just saying. Okay, so maybe start looking at that and different organizations and things you've done at Choithrams, things that you're doing now, you've done with Topshop and so on, the right company. What about the team building activities that drive all this? Inclusivity in the workplace, the diversity you need, the culture has to jump into a new way of moving forward. Are people receptive to that? And if they are receptive, what's the best way of crafting that impact on your team to get the best results?
All right, Dave. So when we talk about inclusivity, you know, generally the first couple of things that come into people's mind is nationality breakup and gender diversity within the organization. I think where we stand today as organizations, we need to go beyond this. We need to now start focusing on generational inclusivity. We are talking about limited number of baby boomers that are left in the organization. We are talking about people like me who are, a part of Gen X. We are sitting at XCOM level at this particular point in time, and then we are dealing with all the millennials and Gen Zs waiting for the Gen Alphas to come into the organization. The whole perspective of inclusivity moving on should be associated to how we merge our thought process with the younger generation, see what their perspectives are, and then try and build a program where we are able to coach baby boomers and Gen X to start merging our thought processes with what the millennials think of, and then coach millennials on the old school thought processes of managing business as well. It needs to be a golden handshake situation. So that is where inclusivity stands for me. When I talk about curating programs, you need to mean well for people to absorb the true sense of engagement within the organization. You can do surveys, all right, and then do nothing about it. You can do surveys, try and find out what mechanisms you have used and what people are really talking about. Conduct specific skip sessions, huddle sessions with your employees. Ask them what is relevant to them in the organization. So rather than throwing a bunch of activities and making a routine out of it just because you have a budget to do so, it doesn't make sense. If I have to give you an example that happens in Choithrams, we associate our engagement initiatives to our corporate values in the organization. We call it CLIMB, popularly, customer centricity, leadership, integrity, meritocracy, and being boundaryless. We try and build coaching programs associated to our values, and it is not just a part of our induction program. Anything that we do in the organization, let's say you're doing appraisals in the organization, it is a part of our value program, which is meritocracy for that matter. We do a lot of MDP programs, management development programs in the organization. We have also adapted to a concept called as a goodness campaign because Choithrams has a tagline which is known as full of goodness. So we have a goodness campaign which runs for a period of approximately 4 to 5 months where different events happen, but we want people to get associated to the whole culture, the whole value proposition of the organization, and you have to live by it. You cannot say that we are an organization which follows integrity and then keep, firing people left, right, center without a strong reason as such. So whatever an organization does, depending upon the challenging times that we have right now, all right, but there should be a very strong back-end focus associated to the values of the organization. And if you are able to do that, people have a better understanding of the overall organization's perspective rather than focusing on why a particular activity or a wellness activity is happening right now.
Over to Mary on this subject. I mean, the same question, but also from an international point of view, how do you deal with diversity, inclusivity, when you've got so many different people with different cultures across the world? Different countries have different things they're receptive to.
I think, well, actually, there's two things. I'll come on to the second part of that in a minute. I mean, I think from a culture point of view and inclusivity, we have a strapline at the White Company is, we are a company for everyone. But I think it starts, your start point has to be your values and your leadership behaviors, because that's where the whole focus comes from. And it's like when you're building your culture and you want it to be inclusive for everyone, you've got to start with what are the values of our company, and therefore what are the leadership behaviors that we want to demonstrate. And it equally comes on for people who want to come into our organization, because if you don't fit what we believe in, then also you might not be right for us as well. So you're trying to create, through values and leadership behaviors, something that does and is right for everyone. So that has to be the start point, because that's how you act, how you behave, and, as I say, what you believe in. The second part, I suppose, when you're saying, I mean, internationally, we are only in the UK, other than online. Sorry, I normally have a loud voice anyway. Other than online anyway. But also within, I've got 1,800 staff. We have all nationalities and cultures anyway within that. So by saying we are for everyone, it's then about how we talk about every nationality, whatever is, if it's Diwali, if it's Hanukkah, if it's Christmas. And we have forums where we learn and we embrace it and we engage it because it's important and we want to understand it and we want to, all work and be together. So it's a lot of it is education, it's listening, that everybody has a voice, and everyone should think they have a voice. So you start to just build a community, really.
With that, when we talk about the voice specifically, there's a lot of people in any organization who don't speak, who sit there quietly, they absorb it, and sometimes they do it because they don't like to put themselves forward, and sometimes they do it because they don't really feel this is for me. I'm just taking a wage, or it doesn't speak to me, and so on. How do you find those people? How do you make that so they step up and they get more of what you're trying to create?
I think if you're observant of people, if it's because they're just shy, it's finding an environment where, and the situation is right, you encourage them and the loud people, you get to be quiet for a minute and try and encourage people to speak. If it's because they're just not interested, then if I'm really blunt, they probably shouldn't be working for you.
That's fair enough. Go on then.
If I may just add where Mary has stopped. I'm the foosball champion of Choithrams, by the way. And the point is not that I am the champion. I am the champion because of my partner. My partner...
Did you get an award for that as well?
Yes. But what is interesting to know is my partner is our office boy, the guy who serves tea and coffee in our office. His name is Suman. And since I partnered with him, it's been back-to-back 2 years that I have been winning foosball championship. Before that, I have tried it for like last 5 years. I did not win a championship. But the point being, when people see the emphasis that an ex-com member is playing hand-in-hand with an office boy, that just sets up. So you can have a foosball table in your office, and every passing employee can sit and think over there, if I start playing right now, am I going to be taken up by my manager in my appraisal that you were wasting time playing foosball? Or do you create some sort of mental process around it where people feel comfortable using those tools that you want to provide to your employees?
With that, I'm going to now throw at Phil the whole point we talked about here about culture, internal, and so on. But we've got a screw that's gone loose in the last couple of years. People are working from home. And people from all around the world being part of your growing organization, not you specifically, but with lots of organizations here. They may be outsourcing it. They may have flexible teams that come into play. How do you create that culture? How do you make it do all the things that our guests have said on stage when you may never see those members of your team in one room or even face to face?
I think it's that shift from, businesses now looking at moving away from things like duration. So duration was always, an employee comes in for 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, whatever it might be. Is that shift from duration and on deliverables and quality. So now we're looking at, how do we measure those deliverables, which we've got to. As an employee, you can't just liberally say you're going to work from home and we don't have any measurables, we don't have any deliverables, but we also don't want to micromanage. We also need to understand what they're doing. And again, from a health perspective, and again, I'm going to look at this from the wellness piece, is that when we're looking at what these people do, we've also got to ensure that their home environment is suitable for them to work from. So the pandemic created a lot of problems because what happened is people went from going into a working environment that's geared up for working the vast majority of the time, the ergonomic chairs, the lighting environment's correct, the culture's there, the community's there, to all of a sudden there's no community, there's no culture, there's no getting together. We were talking about this earlier, Mary, is there's no crossover of days where you go in and you meet as a team and you have those, those water cooler moments and those ideas and you lose all that. And we lost all that during the pandemic. Is that all of a sudden you're an independent, you're on your own, you're probably working from the darkest room in the house because it was the only spare room you had. And all of these things that were conducive with a working environment are now gone. So it's also taking that education that really should exist around office culture or working culture, where we're looking at these environments and taking that environmental aspect and bringing it home as well. And going, look, you can actually perpetuate that same environment, but in a home situation. And we can also do that and reinforce it whilst we're in the working situation. Does that make sense?
It does, but how do you do that? Because what happens in somebody's home has got a lot of other factors that have nothing to do with the culture of your business. So when you turn around and say, right, I want you to now design your home or design your workspace to be like that, there's other things like kids and dogs and cats and TV and Netflix and stuff. So how do you enforce it, or do you just let them find their own interpretation of it?
It's never enforcing. Again, this is kind of what you were saying before, is that we're never trying to enforce anything on anybody, because what we know from, and what I know from coaching, I was 25 years I was a coach. So my whole job was to get someone to do something they probably didn't want to do, which a lot of the time, revolved around exercise or activity or whatever it might be. And what we know is that if I tell them what to do, they won't do it. So again, I've got to guide them to a position where they can make better decisions, they can manage things better. Remember, home life is about management. I have 3 kids. I work from home and have worked from home for the last 7 years. So it's about managing that environment to the best of your ability. But that facilitates and needs me to have flexible working hours. Otherwise, that doesn't work. Because if I dictate a 9-5, I've got school runs, we've got to get the kids to school, we've got to do all this other stuff. School holidays now becomes an issue. So it's about management of that time and me knowing what is the best way for me to facilitate that. Does it mean I just get up earlier and I get a couple of hours of complete peace and quiet where I can get my job done? So it's management, and it always is management. It's never this dictatorship, and I think this is one of the problems that businesses have had, is that we've tried to dictate what people do at work, what people do at home, instead of looking at best practice and going, look, how can we get the most out of our employees without it almost being, I'm going to twist their arm to perform better. I'm just getting them into an environment and a position where they will perform better. If I can make, again, going back on the sleep thing, if I can make 400 employees sleep better or help them sleep better, the net output is they perform better, they perform better at home, they have better relationships, they're better with their colleagues, and it's that net effect again.
That makes a lot of sense. From the point of view of Mary, when you're looking at the organizations that are being set up nowadays and the change to many in the retail industry, a lot of the businesses are online. People like to sit there with a credit card in the pajamas and shop for something that comes into the organization, from the organization into the house. How does setting up a business now look compared to the old bricks and mortar business that we have before? I mean, you've been involved in setting up and making very successful businesses. What would be the next stage for anybody? Is anybody out here starting a new business? No, we've all been there forever, that's fine. But if you were to start a business or to adapt a business, what would you say the balance should be for the bricks and mortar, going into the shop, or the online for the culture to work?
Is that as far as the work environment you're asking me?
Sorry, say again?
As far as whether you're in the office or not, flexible working,
yeah, if you were to set it up, what's the best way?
I mean, I'm an advocate for the office. But I'm also an advocate for flexible working. So I think if I go back to, obviously pre-COVID, when we were like 5 days a week, I don't think that is necessary. And I caveat this where I also think it's different by certain types of business, whatever industry you're in. But if you're in a creative retail environment, it is very hard to work remotely in total. So, for example, at the White Company, we are 3 days in the office, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Everybody is in at the same time, because then you can build your culture. You haven't got that, oh, someone's in on Friday, but I'm in on Monday, therefore you can't have meetings and everything else. And then you've got the flexibility on a Monday and a Friday to work from home. We do say, though, that if on Friday or whatever day it is, we need you in, you can't be saying, I'm looking after the dog or doing the school run. You still, but it happens obviously very rarely. But the reason for it is productivity, speed of answers, a bit like the water cooler moments, brainstorming, and it's culture and building your brand, and it's also learning. So it's very hard, particularly for more junior members, to learn. You learn from listening and being and hearing. And we were, even through COVID, you're finding people didn't know who people were. They weren't learning. They were sat behind screens. And in our environment and in the retail environment, it just doesn't work. But the flexibility of both is what the answer is.
How do you then, and this one's to KUNAL first, how do you then appraise your staff, and how do you give them KPIs when there's so much flux and change in the workplace? Because the old way of doing things would be the carrot and stick or whatever different ways that they put it in, but now people want more. And now people want to see accountability from upstairs as well as downstairs.
Well, post-COVID was an interesting change for Choithrams, if I speak specifically about our business, because who would have thought a retail, brick and mortar, e-commerce distribution organization can work from home as well. So let me put it this way. In the initial stages when COVID occurred, we were forced to work from home. It was not a mental thought process as such. I agree, and I second Mary's thoughts. I am a personal believer of working from office, but as time has gone by, I think we have understood the importance of a hybrid work culture. And that is something that we have now created in Choithrams. Today, this morning, I decided I wanted to come for the conference in the second half. So I was working from home in the morning. It's a call that I can take today. That's how the mindset has changed. And I think the most important element depends upon self-acceptance of the organization, the top leadership of whether they very genuinely believe that they can work from home, or they want to have a hybrid work culture, or just decide whether you don't want to work from home because it would be detrimental for business. So we work in the organization to support business so that the business earns money, right? Whatever works for business is important. At the same point in time, there should be a consensus that comes from the wider population in the organization, which is our employees. What do they want? What do they believe in? When we decided we wanted to adopt a hybrid work culture in the company, the big question was associated to empowerment. Because you cannot use the same leadership style or follow-up mechanisms that you used to have when you were working continuously from office 5 days a week. When people started working online, we were not available for each other, more importantly. So how do you empower each and every level in the organization to take decisions, to take control of the situation when the leadership sometime may not be available for a face-to-face talk? What do they do? What are the limitations? What is the delegation of authority in the organization? All these concepts need to seamlessly work, and an absolute clarity needs to be given to people across not just the leadership level, but even at the management level for that matter. And once they have that clarity, people start consolidating their thought processes, start working towards achieving objectives. Now, KPIs can change because you make people more accountable for their levels, their jurisdictions, right? And interestingly, you need to start looking at project management methodology when you're working from home or in a hybrid work culture, because every single time, if I have to see my supervisor, he may just not be available. For that matter, I may not necessarily be available on a daily basis if I'm working from home or in a hybrid culture for my team members. But if I make them accountable for certain things, I can do weekly reviews, I can do quarterly reviews, I can do monthly, fortnightly. You want to put a tag on it, decide what you want, but let's create a self-acceptance. Because what happens is, and I'll give you a philosophical example over here so that you understand the difference between affirmations and acceptance. Your child may get 60 out of 100 in a test, right? And we may give them examples of our neighbors and their children of how they score a 80 or a 90. And we keep pushing our children stating that, oh, you can get there, right? But that's just an affirmation, all right? We need to tell our child to first accept that they are a 60 out of 100. And then, expect them to try a little bit more harder to get more marks. But if you don't accept who you are as an organization, as an individual, all the affirmations are a lifeline.
Well, I would say 60 out of 100 at that test might not be the other tests that you could do to find out how you get on and how life works. We've got a limited amount of time left, so I'm going to throw a question which we're going to send all the way along the group as well. I'm going to start with Mary with this one. About the future of the retail industry. For everybody who's here in this room, everyone's a decision maker in some way, shape or form. You've had incredible success with the White Company, incredible success with Topshop. What would you say, from your experience, are the things that people get wrong so often that if you could do Harry Potter magic wand, do it this way, bing, you would send across the industry? Or Hermione, she's good at magic as well.
God, if I knew the answer to that, then I'd be a millionaire. So, what do they get wrong in respect to culture, or just wrong?
I think that we're talking about the culture specifically, but about the new employee mindset and the way that organizations are growing moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, the change, which has been amazing, which I think most of us, depending what the age of the audience is the way that we've changed from being a very directive, very sort of, as I say, directive, must-do, culture and leadership to something that is much more empowering and inclusive. And I think that's the biggest difference, the biggest changes, because that has changed, and it goes back to changing the culture of the business, and it changes people's mindset, and they will want to work for you rather than I'm going to come in, do my job, do what I've got to do, and then go home. And they're saying on a CEO now, it should be Chief Empathy Officer. And that has to come from the top, and that has to go all the way down. And I think you spend so much time at work, you've got to enjoy it, and it's got to be an environment that you want to be in. And then that's the change in so many businesses now that is an absolute, joy.
Fantastic. Phil, I can see you rubbing your hands with this question, so I'm going to hand this over to you. What do we all need to do to be better for our staff for moving forward and growing in the future?
Well, again, from a wellness perspective, I think culturally the problem we have, or one of the big problems we have, is we always look at this nth degree, which goes back to the previous question, is that we have this thing that, we used to work from an office. Now we're working from home, but people forget about there's an in-between there. There's a hybrid aspect to this. Remember, human beings are social creatures. We're not designed to work in isolation. We don't work well in isolation. It actually sends us a little bit crazy if we do. So when we're looking at these solutions to these problems, often we're looking at this almost extreme example of what we're going to do to fix this. And often we don't actually look at the root cause of the problem. If you look at company culture isn't often about what's just going on in the office. And we always talk about the bad apple, right? Everybody in here will have employed a bad apple at some point who damages that culture and does things to the culture. And a lot of that is about their behaviors, their habits, the things they do, and they bring that into the mix. And instead of looking at what is causing that bad apple, or the apple to go bad, we're trying to just dismiss them and get rid of them. And again, from a wellness perspective, we're looking at things from a slightly polarized perspective in that we go, look, somebody's got this problem, so therefore we've got to remedy and fix the problem. And it's a bit like when somebody gets an injury. We've all had injuries of some description. is that the area of where the pain is isn't the area we need to treat. And this is the same with company culture. Where we see this pain and we see this thing being inflicted upon a business, we don't look at the root cause of the problem and try and fix the root cause of the problem. What we try and do is we try and dismiss and get rid of it by sticking a plaster on it, in essence.
There's a fascinating story about Brad Bird, who's a famous director, who'd gone to work at Pixar and he'd had a disastrous movie. I think it was John Carter of Mars or something, hadn't worked at all. And so they brought him into Pixar and they said, look, make a movie, we want to do something different. So he said, okay, what I want to do is take all the staff who don't fit in, all the ones that get upset because they don't get what they want, but they're really passionate about it, all the ones that in these surveys about employees just seem to be not right, but they still love what they do. And he said, give me them. So he took all this stuff together and he worked on a process of giving them almost carte blanche to do what they really wanted to do. And the end result was The Incredibles, which won awards left, right, and center, because those people were passionate, they loved the organization, but fitting into the holes that they were given were not the right ways to be able to do it. So I'm going to throw the question in the limited time that we have, because we're going to go to one-sentence answers. In fact, I'm going to throw it, first of all, back to you on this, because when you do get staff who don't want to play, who come up low on the surveys, how do you persuade them to be more group fitting in? To absorb it more and be part of what's going on. Just quickly, Phil, on that one.
It's finding the anchor for that individual. And remember, we're never going to get an organisation where everybody fits in or conforms to the same uniform script or whatever it might be. And it's finding what those, we talk about this in exercise, is that there's this thing, and again, corporate wellness, I keep referring to it, sorry, but there's this thing of giving people a gym membership. So you try and push everybody into this thing where they have to go to the gym, which creates this, ultimately you're hoping it creates this wellness outcome. But not everybody enjoys going to the gym. So what about people who want to find a different anchor? It might be something that's just better for their parasympathetic system. We talk a lot about nervous systems. And it might be just something that calms them, something that takes them out of that work environment. And again, everyone here, everyone in the room will have something they go to which facilitates them switching off from work. And the gym, for some of us, that's that place. But we assume in corporate wellness that all we have to do is we give someone a gym membership and just assume they're going to use it, instead of looking at, what's the thing you'd like to do? How can we facilitate that? How can we help you with that? And it's taking all those things where people don't quite conform to what we would expect them to conform to and giving them options.
As you can see, I'm using my gym membership every single day. Well, I would do if I could find where I left it. Let's look at this, and before I throw the question to KUNAL, we're short on time, so we need to make it relatively short answers. This region has some incredible businesses doing really well, but the culture is not the same as we have maybe with the other two panel members. It's got to be seen a different way for it to work here, because predominantly it is you are told to do it, and therefore you will do it. What has to change? Choithrams has changed it in many ways, and I've seen you grow in 30 years. What's the secret sauce for many of the people here to make a difference?
On a quick note, I would say you need to try and see, as we move on, how you can make sustainability as a part of your value proposition in the organization, and how you coach people to create that kind of sustainable culture within the organization. In Choithrams, it's more about showing confidence in others and telling people how we contribute for their successes. And that leads to a thought process where they wish to contribute back to the organization's success, right? I always tell people when I'm doing a coaching session that, there is, in any organization for that matter, there is a vision, a dream that company sees, and there's an execution that the company prepares to achieve that vision. What is missing in today's time is the alignment in between. Because only and only if you're able to have absolute clarity on what your processes are, how you communicate within the organization, do you have an open dialogue in the organization? And if you showcase encouragement in the organization by showcasing care, showcasing contribution, showcasing some sort of camaraderie approach in the organization, that alignment creates a better midterm approach to align your vision with the execution that you're trying to look at.
Absolutely. We've got 50 seconds left. What I'm going to do is put you on the spot to give a phrase or a sentence that you think sums up the way, the strategy that people should be using to move forward? It could be your own, it could be an organization you've worked with. What would you say as a takeaway or a meme that everybody here could use? No pressure, because we didn't rehearse this. What would you say? Who wants to start?
I'm going to repeat what I said before. Is focus on quality, not duration.
Nice.
Your people are your most important asset and your competitive advantage. Care for them.
Fantastic.
From a strategy perspective, if it sounds stupid and it works, it's not stupid.
I love that. And my personal one would be jump and grow wings on the way down, which means throw yourself into it, do the calculated risks, and you never know what the results could be. What's the worst that could happen? Maybe you learn something, or maybe you get the results you truly want. Now, it's been a complete honor being on this panel at this incredible event with an amazing audience that we have paying attention. I'd like you to share your love and thanks to our incredible panel. First of all, KUNAL and Mary and Phil. Please give it up for them.